What up?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I'm kind of tired.
Yeah, I believe it. So, how were y'all's weeks? I know I just talked to you more about it, but
really good. Actually. Yeah. Except for Thursday. Thursday sucked, but
Yeah, fuck Thursday.
In particular,
that was horrible because like at work, I just had a really bad day. My boss yelled at me. He said I wasn't focusing hard enough, and I was trying to explain to him that it's like I was trying to explain to him that like the things that he considers other people to be distracted were actually helping me get more sales. And so like when he told me not to do it anymore, I just got like really bored. And then he's just like, "Dude, you need to actually focus." And it's like I was trying to explain to him. He's like, "Well, maybe it's not a good fit." Then and I was like, "It never." Sitting there thinking like it never was a good fit, but I'm doing it because I have to have the money. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really frustrating to hear that, like, oh, you know, like, you just need to focus, like, forehead, right? It's like, all right.
Got him, dude.
But I was trying to tell him that, like, the things that I'm doing, it's not like other people, where it's like, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know.
Nah, you can't even. I don't have ADHD. If you just tell me to focus, I'm just gonna headbutt you in the face.
I will give you a nosebleed in response. Seems good. Seems good.
And I will give myself a nosebleed in the process because I'm weak as shit.
Yes, wonderful.
I woke up nosebleeding and I nosebled again this evening while playing solo queue.
Got him.
It's literally killing me.
Yeah. But other than that, like, I mean, A13 even saw the difference. Like, my landing phase is like, holy fucking way better now. So it's like feeling way better to play.
You've been playing.
I'm not like winning lanes, but like I'm not hard losing lanes anymore, and that's like still a really big difference because like.
And when you're looking at the actual like outcomes in lane, right? Like you're not going back to base because you got chunked out anymore, and that's like night and day difference. You know, it's not that you're like only doing a little bit better. It's that you're no longer trying to do stuff that's not going to work, and then falling behind. You're just like getting ganked 3 times.
Dude, I got ganked at like 2:30 with the level 3 Gragas who just cleared. He cleared
full red side clear into bot gank, into scuttle, into repeat bot gank. It's just like oof.
And then Shyvana took his top side, so he just elected to stay bot side and then try to like gank a third time, like less than a minute later.
Yeah.
But because we actually had vision and they couldn't position in time, so we were able to just get out of it. So he ended up wasting a ton of his time, fell 30 CS behind the Shyvana.
Well, the last time I played against the Rek'Sai, she did just that, but to my top laner. Red side clear, gank, kill, get my Gromp, get Scuttle, gank, kill. And I was like, wait, fuck, I did not see that one coming.
Repeat ganks that's a fucking really weird to read for me.
Yeah, it's a fucking Pikachu surprise every time, for sure. Like,
no, like it's with infinite time to think about it. It makes sense. It's really like it's a really, really great way to shut down a lane. Like,
and right, because laners almost never read a repeat gank. I mean, there were factors that Aethys and I run over. Like, we had a ward on his like blue side, and he hadn't gone there yet, and like he had 12 CS beforehand, so we knew that he could have gone Scuttle and came back. So we could have got like a ward or something and read it. But like, yeah, I just like in the game, I was just like, oh, I guess that's a thing.
Yep, understandable. Repeat ganks are the hardest thing to anticipate, like, or predict, and also the thing that will put you behind the most when you get hit by it.
Yeah, and it's kind of cool because I did get really far behind. I was like 30 CS behind, but I like kept it at 30 CS behind for the rest of the lane, and still was able to find trades and have some pressure. So I was like,
coming out of the second gank, you were even on CS, and Vayne had 3 kills, and you had 2 deaths, and it was like a 3-0 lane versus no 3 lane, right? And then for the next like 15 minutes, you managed to only go down 30 CS, have reasonable amounts of pressure, and like didn't bleed any more than that for how far they got you going. It's like, fucking what the hell? Like, Yeah, it was really, really good. Really, really good. Yeah. And, like, you know, at that same time, right, like, you know, like, you're, like, 20, 30 CS down. Your jungler is 20, 30 CS up for all of the time that Gragas spent on bot side. So, like, and then, like, Shyvana actually, like, did stuff and, like, snowballed with the lead, you know? Whereas their Vayne did not.
Gragas didn't really get much. He got like a couple of assists, and that was it. That's not really enough to make up for the 30 CS he lost in the XP.
Yeah. So he got bullied by Shyvana in their jungle for the rest of the game. It's like, okay, neat. I like.
Yeah, for something like that to work, he's really playing a gambit there for sure.
Mm-hmm. And like,
yeah, I mean that was just
the Vayne is supposed to be able to make something happen, right? Like, I mean, we looked at
if
all the times that she should be able to like destroy you, right? But like, you know,
I shouldn't have, like, to be completely honest with you, she had her fucking cutlass in like 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Yeah. So it's like
it should have been.
I really should have not been allowed to do anything. She was like either hard
you
freeze
had
or
Lulu,
no CS,
she had
like
Nami. Like she should have been running directly at you.
She should be able to walk in front of your caster minions and just order you to death.
Yeah, no, 100%. She never did, so I was fine to just like probe and stay safe. But it was like, you know, if that Vayne was double lift, then I'd be like, all right, I'm just gonna alt F4, open mid, this game's over. Like I'm done. I'm not even gonna try.
Hardcore situation.
Okay, well, I would try, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. A situation that should have been a hardcore loss, and instead, through superior positioning, you were able to actually stay even, right? And that's, like we say, like that's the same thing as outplaying them, right? Like you are outplaying them by doing that. So,
they tried so hard to punish me, and they just couldn't, because they couldn't figure out where they needed to stand.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Dilka? How's your week this week?
Well, when it came to solo queue, I literally just fucking end the week at the exact same LP I started it, which is D285 LP.
Well, there you go.
Is that bad or good?
That's nice. I'd say that's nice.
Yeah.
Because you're normally going up and down through variants, right?
Yes, I'm usually fluctuating a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that you feel like your skill's starting to stabilize a bit?
Yeah, I'm fine with that outcome. However, on Friday we played a tournament with Vircon, Layla, and the other two dudes, and that was awful. I got so mad at them. Holy shit!
Got so mad at who?
The entire team.
Solo queue team or like your
tournament? We were playing in a tournament and we lost on the first match we played and got and lost. So that was the end.
How bad was it?
Layla got the last peak to counter peak and went down, or got solo killed and went down 30 CS.
Oh no!
Was doing really well as casted into Corki, and bot lane got solo killed, got ganked on a gank that was pinged, and then got solo killed and kept trying to fight while behind. And it was just Sejuani versus Udyr. So
speaking of Vircon, me and him had another talk last night. I don't know if you guys saw it, but like he kind of admitted that it was like. He felt like because he was ahead, he should win those games, and I was like, that kind of reminds me of that Picard quote where it's like, you can do everything right and still lose. Yeah. And that's not a weakness, that's life. And I think that really spoke to him because he was like, well, I'm going to try to really internalize that. So hopefully he starts to realize that, like, sometimes you just play well and you just get fucked. Like, that's okay. It happens, right? It doesn't mean you played bad. It doesn't mean you're bad because you lost. It's just, you know what I mean? Like,
win-loss is an absolutely terrible measure in the short run of skill progression, and not even skill progression, of just skill in general, right? Like, you fucking watch Faker lose 20 games in a row in Challenger. Does that mean that he's a bad player, like XD?
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, obviously, right?
He did Worlds last year.
Clearly, all of his skill has evaporated. He has become a bronzy, and he is just on his way there right now.
Or like even that one time that Faker just like got hard outplayed by Gold Brand because Gold Brand just stood there.
Exactly. It's like, all right, nice.
He literally just stood in the same spot while Faker was like sitting there trying to outplay him, and he just like, wait a second, and just got blasted.
When you forget that you're not playing against Yomi 3, you're playing against Yomi -1.
Exactly. No, he doesn't even know what he's doing. How the fuck am I supposed to know what I'm doing?
Yeah.
I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Yeah,
so that game was an absolute disaster, and so
I'm sorry, dude.
Nah, it was the first
there's some learning experiences there, though, right, for everybody. So,
yes, obviously, but it's like, we've seen my discussion with Layla Seda, I think it's not a lot of team stuff. And it's just like people need to work on their game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you.
Well, and Layla has been improving a lot, so I'm confident that he's taken the loss very seriously and will like improve on it. But I'm not that confident about bot lane. But whatever.
I'll just replace bot lane with me. No, I'm kidding.
Damn you, right? Moonlight as AD carry and support. 2 monitors, 2 hands. It's possible. Make it happen.
I'm also on 180 ping forehead. I still win.
F-keying with the feet. You know what I'm saying? We got the quad keyboard going. Anyway.
Yeah, I ended up getting tilted in the game and making some, not being as patient as I was during all streams and flex game, because we had some.
That tells me that like one of your bigger problem before was desperation, right?
Oh yeah.
So that tells me that in a level 5 game that you maybe still sometimes problem, but like the fact that it doesn't happen until you're in a level 5 situation really says a lot about how much you've improved on that, and I think that you should be happy about that.
Yeah, just gotta fucking remove it from my level 5 games.
Yeah, and that's really hard to do. Because you don't have level 5 games that often, right? So it's like,
I'll increase the frequency of level 5 games will increase in the coming
you know, there might be ways for you to do that without needing to actually play. Like if you inject challenge into your game, in some ways you might be able to force a level 5 game just through changing your physiology.
Yeah, but it doesn't. It comes close, but it's not quite the exact same thing.
It's definitely not the same thing, and that's definitely a difference.
No replacement for the It gets me to level 4.5, you know, which is already something, which allows me to work on the level 5 without actually playing them. But it's going to take a lot of them.
Yeah. So the thing that Aetherton was telling me that I really liked was that like the way we can think about the level of the system in that way is like the value of each rep. Or like at level 5, you get the most value for your rep. Or at like level 4, it's like maybe 3/4 of a rep, and then like level 1's like 1/8 of a rep or whatever. So it's like to get something better at level 5, you have to do it so many more times at level 1 to 2. So even if you can only force it to level 4.5, it's still at least much more valuable than just trying to practice it when you're not feeling any pressure at all.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, my solo queue's been I've been playing. Since that game, I've been just playing Hecarim, Rek'Sai, and Lee Sin because I'm just an angry dude that just wants to win every fight I take.
I don't blame you. Being a jungler that loses fights seems really Monka, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it's quite a thing.
And like, I don't know, like it just seems like farm jungle's just never the meta anymore. Because if you don't win fights, you just don't win the game.
Terrible. Farm junglers are terrible, but there's like J4 Sejuani that are not farming junglers and that are like really good gankers, but take them in the river.
But they still have really high level pressure points at like level 3, like at certain points, like J4 is level 2 or Sejuani's level 3 or whatever.
Yeah, but like they're not going to bring enough damage to do anything to a lane that's in a bad spot.
Right.
They allow you to play really, really well from even, and they give so many things from even. But from behind, Sejuani is basically a Karan mini.
That's the truth, isn't
it? And just play fucking Rek'Sai where you're just able to one-shot anyone at any point in the game.
Oh my
just
God,
play Rek'Sai forehead.
I had a Rek'Sai last night.
And just like fucking run over anyone. Team fight 30 minutes, it's a 4-item Sivir, just fucking ult her, ignite, red smite her face, and just run her down.
Ignite?
Let's go.
Ignite Rek'Sai?
No, Rek'Sai last night.
Oh my God. That's aggressive.
I was against Ezreal as Twitch, and we were doing pretty good. I was like maybe 5 to 10 ahead because he fucked up his wave management. I was like, hell yeah. Wave was pushing back. And then, like, I'm back, like, because I had to really low, and the wave's pushing back anyway, but my Vel'Koz and Rek'Sai tried to bait the Ezreal into coming in, and then, like, he eased out, but this level 4 Rek'Sai just tunnels in behind our caster line, and then tries to kill Ezreal and dies, and then when she hits level 6, she comes and ganks again, the same sort of situation, and then tries to tunnel under turret and ult him. Doesn't even ult under turret, like dives, and he just dies, and then Ezreal snowballs with a 2-0 lead, and then the game's over. Like, and then Rek'Sai blames me for it because I wasn't far enough up, and I'm like, you do realize I had a wave and a half, right? There's no way I'm ever doing that.
Obviously, it is your fault. Better
jungle. I'm like, yeah. Better bot lane wins, right? Jump under their turret twice, better bot lane wins. That's exactly what I'm thinking in that situation. Like, no, I was actually ahead. Like, if you let me just manage my wave and come when they're actually gankable, then we hard win that game to no contest. But I can't fight an Ezreal who has his Iceborne Gauntlet. So it's like...
Fuck, no, yeah. Anyway.
It's like, dude... How do you get to Plat 1 having such a little understanding of how to gank somebody like that? Like, I don't know, dude. Just really frustrating.
Don't think you can. You will stop saying that at any elo.
I know, like, yeah, you're right. Thinking that, like, god damn it. That's probably Tarzan too. Like, how do you get a challenger and not come in the lane when you have priority? Come to jungle and you have priority. Like, yeah, you're right, but still.
It's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. It is, and it's like. And it's funny because when I get the gold, I was like, how do you get the gold without knowing these things? So how do you get the plat without knowing these things? This makes you can hit. Happening.
You can be good
by knowing other things is the answer. Yep. That is how you do it.
Too many things.
Right.
Yeah.
You can just suck ass in lane. But let's get started.
It's so funny because I had so much other knowledge and then just like couldn't climb very well because my laning knowledge was just not there.
So let's go ahead and kick off. So, this week's chapter, titled The Principles of Deliberate Practice on the Job. And the chapter opens with a medium-sized section on the Top Gun School of the U.S. Navy. So, during the Vietnam War, for a good portion of the war, I think they said something like 3 years, dogfight performance was pretty mediocre, right? Started the war on roughly like a 2-to-1 KD, and then in year 3 dipped to basically 1-to-1 KD. And Navy top brass was like, this is not good. We're gonna do something about this. So they set up a training program where the very best pilots that they had served as instructors on the Red Force, and they flew planes that were very similar to what the enemy was flying, and they flew using tactics that the enemy was using, right? Then they had the Blue Force, which were the pilots just slightly worse than the best pilots, and they had them as students, flying U.S. jets, using U.S. tactics. They ended up doing kind of mock dogfights, right? With no bullets, no missiles, just cameras and radar, pushing the planes really hard, but not actually shooting each other. And the idea was to see if they could train better dogfighters, basically. To quote the authors, the real action occurred once the pilots landed in what the Navy called after-action reports. During these sessions, the trainers would grill the students relentlessly. What did you notice when you were up there? What actions did you take? Why did you choose to do that? What were your mistakes? What could you have done differently? When necessary, the trainers could pull out the films of the encounters and the data recorded from the radar units and point out exactly what had happened in a dogfight. And both during and after the grilling, the instructors would offer suggestions to the students on what they could do differently, what to look for, what to be thinking about in different situations. Then the next day, trainers and students would take to the skies and do it all over again, right? So I read this passage and I was like, this is literally a VOD review. It is exactly what we do all the time.
I would say it is in-house scrims.
It's almost like an in-house scrim, then a VOD review, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a combination. I think that's a good point. It is in-house scrims, but it's definitely like the after action report process is 100%. It's a VOD review, right? But
it definitely puts more value on my thinking. Reading that was like, okay, maybe actually in that case, like for a game like League, maybe scrims and then review is actually better because these players have enough mechanical prowess and decision-making skills that maybe they don't really need to spend all that much time outside of those sorts of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was starting to lean towards Cyclone's ideas that like, hey, maybe actually it's better to spend less time scrimming and more time doing other things to improve skill. But actually, I think for pro players, that's probably still the best way is the scrims review. But maybe for amateur players that still need to work on their fundamentals. I mean, obviously pro players can work on them, but it's much smaller scale than say Cyclone's team, which are amateur. Maybe scrims aren't as good for them as they are for pros. I'm not sure where that delineation would fall, but
Well, what do you think makes it so that this is so that training specific skills would be better or worse for different levels of skills of player? What's your thinking around that?
I suppose that the thing is for me that like in a lot of cases, if your laning skill isn't where it needs to be, then most of the time what happens in a specific matchup won't really matter because you're making fundamental errors anyway. You're not making matchup errors, and that's sort of how I've started really thinking about it. Like walking too close is a fundamental error, but like not dodging a Nami bubble, that's more like maybe a matchup error. In a lot of cases, you can also argue that it's a fundamental error, but like there are certain things where like
how do you draw the line?
Okay, right, exactly, and like I haven't really figured that part out yet, but I kind of like the idea of thinking about things in terms of fundamental skill versus matchup errors. Like,
keep in mind
I'm
too.
not sure where that would be, and it's something I'm still kind of throwing around in there. But
keep in mind too that although many pro players are far and above what you'll see from any amateur player, their fundamentals aren't perfect either.
No, they're not. That's true.
They're making fundamental errors just like the rest of us are, right? And so when Cyclone suggests doing fundamentals training and taking time away from scrims, I think what he's trying to do is he's trying to balance kind of his perception of like the frequency of fundamentals errors versus more like matchup or theoretical errors, right? And like especially too when you start going into regions that are more minor like OCE, I think that the level of fundamentals that you'll find in pro players is a lot lower than you'll find in perhaps larger regions. You know what I mean? So
yeah, sure.
I think really kind of the idea, right, is that it's all about you always want to be doing deliberate practice, right? The question is what skills are you needing to work on, right? And if you need to be working on fundamentals and like broad theoretical concepts and like building mental models in the first place, right, then things other than like scrim review are probably going to be better, right?
Yeah.
The reason that they say that the Top Gun approach is like a reasonable alternative is that if you don't know already what methods to use to train somebody really well, and if you don't know already what skills they actually need to work on, right, then this is about as good as you can get, right?
Yeah.
But if you do know
the highest level environment,
yeah, if you do know what actually needs to be worked on, right, then an approach that looks more like the weekly sessions that you'll get in musical training tend to end up being more effective at pushing somebody in a specific direction, right? Deliberate practice instead of purposeful practice.
I think an important delineation here too is that like with music you can get pretty close to replicating a performance situation through
yes,
manipulating your environment, but with something like dogfighting, you literally cannot replicate performance because
it's competitive.
If you replicate performance, you literally give your dudes a chance to die in training, and that's probably not the best thing to do, right? So it's like
that too.
So it's like maybe in that case, like maybe in-house scrims and review is like maybe more like Cyclone said is like a part of the equation.
Yeah,
but probably now still even maybe less than I was even thinking that it would be after first reading the chapter. But I think it's I still think that like for non-fundamental situations that pop up a lot more often in pro games, like since fundamentals aren't as, I don't want to say that they aren't as emphasized because they are, just as emphasized. But you know what I'm
yeah, where good fundamentals are more the norm than the exception.
Right. So
yeah, and you won't get any edge just by the fundamentals.
Right, and so those are the situations where I would say that you probably spend more time scrimming and reviewing. But
yes,
the thing that I think is really interesting though, is that when you look at the best players in the world versus just below the best players in the world, right? When you look at the meta setters as opposed to the meta followers, right? What are the things that keep them there? I think it is fundamentals, right? When you look at Dopa and Faker and what sets them apart from other mid laners that you might watch, right? It's that they tether better. It's that their damage foresight is better. It's all of the fundamental stuff, right? Like,
yeah.
And so when we put it that way, right? I don't even know that we have, as a community, reached a point where scrims are the right thing to be doing, right? I think that the general level of the game is still at a point where fundamentals training can create edges, right? Just because people aren't creating edges in fundamentals by doing fundamentals training doesn't mean that it isn't more effective, right? I think that there is an argument that it has never been tried, right? All that anyone has ever done in League so far is essentially Top Gun style training, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's really exciting for somebody to try something more fundamentals focused and see where that leads them.
So what kind of training would you, as given your experience with everything you have, what kind of a training would you suggest for your players? Would it be more like a drill focused fundamental thing, like you do 1v1 matchup, kind of like maybe what they do in NFL, where they actually just drill certain plays over and over again?
Yes, but even to make it even more alive, right? If you can make it not necessarily like a scrim, right? Like let's be very careful in terms of like how we use the word scrim, right? I'm going to use scrim to mean essentially like a spar, right? Both teams are just kind of playing and just kind of trying to win, right? With no real focused performance-oriented goal in mind, other than to play essentially as though they were performing, and then to do an after action report, right, where they break down kind of what happened and what the decisions they made were, and then learning happens during the review, not necessarily during the actual in-game time, right? If we contrast this with something closer to I'll take Cyclone's favorite, right, the objective setup, right? He's this is a drill that he's been trying to get like a 10-man roster to do for like ages, right? I'm talking like a year and a half now, right? And the idea there is, people play up until the point where it's like a reasonable thing to be contesting an objective, either a Drake or a Baron, right? And then the win condition shifts from get the Nexus to just get the Drake, right? And both teams are focusing explicitly on how do I set up for this objective? What are my base timings? What itemization should I choose in order to make getting this Drake the best sort of thing that I can do? How do I communicate with my teammates around where we're going to go and how we're going to push the waves in order to set up the vision? And there's like all of these little like communication and timing and map movement things that as a team need to be ironed out, right? These are things that happen kind of willy-nilly in solo queue, and it gets to a level where it's fine, right? But once you start getting into competitive play where people need to coordinate these things much more cleanly in order to see success, it's a drill that you can run, right? Where the objective is get the Drake, right? Which trains maybe not a specific skill, but certainly a group of skills, right? That are all involved in the objective of objective control, right? So those sorts of things, like exercises around either specific phases of the game or specific objectives within the game. I mean, easily you can say that like a 1v1 or a 2v2 is a type of drill, right? where you could have like a 1v1 or a 2v2 laning drill where the objective is to send the opponent back to base or to kill them, right? And you can gain a lot of value doing these sorts of things, and it's closer to it's closer to deliberate practice than you'll get with a Top Gun approach, right? Because it's got goals, it's got metrics, it's focused, it's getting people outside of their comfort zone. Whereas when you are just doing scrims, a lot of players will focus exclusively on trying to win the scrim, right? They're just playing to perform, right?
Is this chapter the one where they talk about the fake sort of like pilot? You know how they have like the little pilot dashboard that they can practice on, and they tell you like a situation and you have to like react to it. So that's something later that they started doing. Okay. We don't have to talk about that then, but sort of like something like that might be a good idea. But the problem I have with that sort of specific thing is that like repetitions are very valuable, and certainly playing up to a point and then just standing there and practicing it over and over, like if you can, is great. But the problem is the more you do it, the more the conditions sway, right? If, for example, we could get a practice tool to lock levels for 10 people to, get a specific amount of gold for 10 people, sure, then I think that kind of practice would be more doable. Because more efficient. Thing is, right? Because the thing is
if there's a really high cost to doing that training. Right?
And I mean, I don't know if it's much higher cost than just running a normal game and then just practicing it there. It's probably around the same level, but you can maybe get a little deeper. But if you could spend, 30 seconds on each repetition instead of 20, instead of 3 per hour, you get, maybe 50 an hour or, whatever. And it's like...
Sure. And I don't think anyone is trying to argue that, like, that's not better, right? Like, obviously, if Riot creates a more full-fledged practice tool, the amount of deliberate practice that teams will be able to do exponentially increases. Oh my fucking god, the level of the game will increase so much.
What I'm saying is that
if that were to happen,
I'm not sure that style of practice is worth the input that it takes. Like having 10 people and just playing scrims, that's totally fine. I think that's way better than having to schedule scrims. But I don't think that taking a chunk of the game and trying to deliberately practice it by running up to that point and then practicing it once and then resetting it, it's like it seems like at that point
I don't think he's arguing to reset it though. I think that the idea is just you like play the game kind of from that position, and somebody wins the fight, and then another Drake spawns, and then you do it again, right? Like both teams focusing really hard on trying to set up the objectives, and like it's basically like playing a solo queue game where you're just focusing on working on your positioning or whatever, but on a full team scale, right? With a full team objective in mind, right? And I don't think that the idea is to reset. I think you do it every Drake spawn, you do it, and then every Baron spawn, you do it, and then the game ends, right? And it's just you play a game with both teams having an objective in mind, and with the idea of as close to deliberately practicing a scenario, right, as possible, right, where both teams kind of play maybe a little bit differently than they might usually do, in order to allow for that scenario to occur, right? And like these slight modifications from full resistance, full I'm just going to play to win gameplay allow teams to get more focused practice in during their scrims, during scrim sessions. It's kind of like halfway in between, like a full proper reset drill and just like a straight scrim. Right, it's like the middle ground between.
The problem I have with that is that you only get one rep per. It's like you're getting multiple reps of Dragon practice, but then in every single one, all the situations are different, right? Where it's like, if you really want, well, yeah, sure, because like you have different items, you have different levels, different experience thresholds. That's a massive difference.
Those are all the same when you start thinking about the objective of practicing. I'm in a game state. And now I want to get to a game state where I can contest a Drake, right? When you're practicing it's not that you're practicing the skill of, this is the game state, I'm going to get Drake from this game state. It's, I'm going to practice the skill of figuring out how to get Drake from any game state that could occur. Similar to, I'm going to figure out how to position in any position that it could occur. as opposed
Wouldn't it still be better
this specific scenario?
Like, because the way I'm seeing it is like you would get the same value out of playing a regular game in that case. Because in my opinion, because it's like if you're going to deliberately practice, then you ought to deliberately practice. Because it seems to me it'd be more efficient to try to practice from the same game state until you get that one down, then move on to the next game state until you get that one down, rather than trying to change it.
It is more efficient, but that's not an option.
It is more efficient, but it's not possible. Like it's
right. So then, why do we, in that case, try to do scrims where we only focus on that instead of just doing
because the theory is like the author says, right? If you can't do deliberate practice, the best thing that you can do is get as close as possible as you can. Right? So if you can go from getting maybe 2 reps in a game where everyone's just focused on winning to instead getting 5 reps in a game, right? You're more than doubling the number of drakes that your team contests. You're more than doubling the number of objectives that your team contests. And if objective control is the thing that you've identified that your team is struggling with, right? And it is about those decisions of when to base and how to communicate around it and the coordination involved, getting access to more reps than you otherwise would get ends up being more deliberate, more effective practice. Doesn't that make sense?
And
sure.
The second thing with that is that when you're playing a scrim and you're trying to win, you are trying to coordinate like 3 or 4 different plays at the same time, because you're not playing for the Drake, you're playing from the follow-up of the Drake, you're playing for the next objective, the tower that you want to get, or the team fight you want to set up. But if you're just focusing on the Drake, then that gives you so much more time to think about it and to coordinate it while in game, which allows you to progress, get just faster at doing it every time until you can just like fight the position or like contest the Drake, but because you've done it so many times, you know all the steps so well as a team that you can coordinate 2 other plays at the same time when you're like in an actual game, right? And,
I can buy that 100%, but I don't buy going into and then just because like the thing is in a regular game, like those dragons will be up for contesting every 5 minutes anyway. So if your goal is to just contest every objective, then you would play the regular scrim with the goal of contesting every objective and then talking about it afterwards. It doesn't seem to make sense to create a specific with 10 people when if you have an in-house scrim situation, I would agree with you, but like if you don't have 10 people, then it doesn't seem to make sense to try to grab 10 people when you can go do a scrim and then just say this game goal is not to win, it's to contest objectives. And I think that people are saying, oh, scrims are too focused on winning, that means we cannot play scrims without focusing on winning, and that's very incorrect in my opinion.
Oh, sure. I disagree with you that people are trying to say that. I think you're 100% correct. It's definitely not to say that like you can only do deliberate practice in situations that aren't scrims. You can only I don't think that's the idea at all. The idea is if it is possible and to set up a 10-man roster and do this like in-between drilling and scrims sorts of practice, that would be more effective. And he's interested in and excited about trying that sort of thing out.
Yeah. And one of the other main differences is that you just pretend that the Drake is what both team wants. And that's like
maybe it's a fucking Cloud Drake, right? Like nobody fucking cares. It's like a full team fight composition. But both teams agree because it's an in-house scrim and because they're practicing objective setup, we'll pretend it's an Infernal, right? And that then gets you an extra rep that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten in that particular game.
Exactly.
It's more efficient practice.
To me, it's about getting more reps than you would in normal scrims and more focused reps. That's what would make it valuable. And you can't like
because like if one team is playing yeah, if like one team is playing
going to a scrim where the team doesn't have the same idea, and then you have this idea that you want to contest every trade.
Okay.
If only one team is trying to contest every objective and the other team is just trying to win, then when the team that's trying to contest every objective gets the Clown Drake successfully, but then gets fucking dumpstered on the other side of the map because the other team doesn't know that that's what like is supposed to be practiced, then yeah, you lose the opportunity to even practice objective setup for the rest of that game because you've inted your chances at winning. You get what I'm saying? So like it only really is efficient to do it in like a 10-man roster sort of situation. Like you can do it, but like you were saying, right? Like how do you practice tethering if every time you mess up tether, how do you practice tethering closer than you are currently capable of doing in normals, when every time you mess up a little bit, you get fucking butt pounded for the rest of the laning phase, right? And you don't even get an opportunity to practice tethering from that point forward.
Well, so if I can go back to that, but first, Dilga, I missed part of what you said, like the first half of that. Can you repeat that for me? Because you guys were talking over each other.
What was it exactly?
It was regarding the scrim, and like you said there was one other important thing that makes it different than a regular scrim.
So I was saying, if both teams agree that all the drakes are the main objective that they want, it makes a big difference. So that, just like Atherton was saying. And the second thing is, if you're trying to just do that in a normal scrim, like you decide that for your team, every drake is the most important thing you can take, and you play for that, it's also like bad manners, because it's going to give worse practice to the enemy team, because they're expecting to face a team that will try to win and then oppose them in win conditions, right? It's like if you're trying to practice, you're playing a football match, right? And one team just wants to always get score goals from one quarter of the field, and the other team is just trying to get practice in just playing the entire field. It's going to be terrible for both teams, and that's why I think it's it's not even bad manners. It's just bad for both teams.
Yeah, it's inefficient practice that way. It would be better to just do a regular scrim than to practice with one team trying to do something deliberately and the other team not. Because it just gives such a huge advantage to the other team that the game state gets like super out of whack super fast. Whereas if both teams agree to sit down and try to do this specific sort of situation over and over, then both teams get good reps on that one thing, right? And so if we're talking like how do teams negotiate, right? You might have like a scrim block of 4 games, right? And the first 2 games, one team wants to be practicing objective control. Both teams practice objective control for the first 2 games, even if the other team doesn't really think that's what they should be working on. And then the second 2 games, both teams practice whatever the second team wants to be working on for their scrim set, right? And then by doing that, right, both teams, even though they only got 2 games worth of practice, right? If they go from seeing the scenario 2 times a game to 5 times a game, right? Then total they get 10 reps in those 4 games, right? Assuming that they get no reps in the other games for whatever reason, right? That's still better than seeing 8 reps 2 times per game when both teams are just scrimming, right? So like both teams get 10 reps on the thing they were trying to do instead of 8 reps on the thing they were trying to do. So even though they're giving up some time, it ends up being okay. Anyway. So to quote again, am I still connected? I am connected, right? We're just all being quiet? Okay. Over time, the students learned to ask themselves the questions, as it was more comfortable than hearing them from the instructors, and each day they would take the previous session's lessons with them as they flew. Slowly they internalized what they'd been taught, so they didn't have to think so much before reacting, and slowly they would see improvement in their dogfights against Red Force. I thought this was just like a really wonderful example of kind of the movement from conscious competence to unconscious competence, right?
All right, I'm back, all right? Can hear me now?
Yes,
yeah.
You're back.
So I've been trying to talk, and I was wondering why people were talking over me. I was getting kind of pissed, but it turns out my mic unplugged.
Gotcha.
But
okay.
what I was saying is that, a long time ago, Koreans used to scrim, and I really liked all your points, and I sort of starting to think about changing my stance on that, but as far as Korean scrims go, a long time ago, I remember like when it was Worlds 2016, World 2015, where NA teams complained that their scrims weren't as good in NA because in Korea, they don't try to win.